Hello and welcome to What's on Your Shelf. And today on the show, we have an amazing guest.
Good evening and thank you for joining us for the KTN News Center. My good name is Ian Denis Odur.
Get into situationships. I become very, very flattered. So many different people.
After more university, did you get into employment? Did you get into business straightforward? How exactly was your journey and how did you morph to where exactly you are right now?
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing to you on What's on Your Shelf today is none other than Ian Denis.
I try to describe myself by my purpose. I'm a creator, I'm a teacher, and I help guide people through the gifts that I have, multiple gifts that God has actually given me. Yeah, so I'm an author, I'm in the TV, I'm in the media industry, and I run a couple of businesses, so that's who I am. I create, I teach, and I guide. In this life, I think you can only succeed by the kind of relationship you can be able to hold. Just by virtue that I relate to an uncle does not mean that an uncle owes you anything. It's important to understand history because history creates context to what exactly you can actually build on. As the Gen Zs and millennials, just just get yourself out and vote. Because once the president has once the constitutional powers, he can make any decision that he wants. Because those who did not vote enabled him just as much as those who voted for him.
What in your upbringing has inspired who you are today?
I'm the firstborn in a family of 3, and one of the core things that I'll say that has enabled me to literally be who I am is because of the upbringing I had. I have parents who've just created an environment. You can do anything. Like me, I've never been told to do this or do this. Mine is like, you just find your expression, it'll support you. Every small things and every particular instance of life I find myself into, I've always had that particular support. I've never had the pressure. You have to do this, black tax, I'm just humble enough that I have parents who have enabled me. You just do what you want to. Like, this is what you want to do. Just go for it. I remember one of those particular moments, I did Bachelor of Commerce as my first degree.
Yeah.
And I did it because I wanted to be like my dad. You find that after finishing Form 4, what do you look up to? You always look at your dad because my dad is pretty successful in his career. But within that particular journey, I started now uncovering who I am. I like talking, and then I realized I liked media. But since I already started this particular journey, I starting my pursuit of media and trying to know things within that particular space while I was doing my commerce. And then when I finished it, or maybe doing that particular process, I'd started my first business when I was still in university. But while at it, I'd also find my expression in media. And then I had just a candid conversation with my dad. I was like, hey, Dad, thank you so much for paying school fees for me. But I'd already uncovered my purpose is in business and in media. And he was like, you go for it. Like, go for it. I've never had my parents oppose anything that I do.
Yeah.
They always just support and they always just try to provoke me to try to think, okay, how does it work? And I think I'm just lucky enough in that particular manner whereby I've been in an environment that literally has nurtured me. My family has been such a key pillar to just enable me be me. Yeah.
So you went, your first degree was in business.
Yes.
How did you find yourself on TV?
I think I'd never imagined I would be on TV. It was never really been a dream. But I think this thing was sparked when I was in university in Strathmore. I realized I'm a natural conversationalist. I enjoy just sharing people's story. So I had an idea while in university, why not do a YouTube show back then. I was calling it the Ian Denis show, primarily just to highlight students in the university who are actually doing more than just being in the university. Because I think when I'm in the university, I used to read a lot. And I just started getting a lot of exposure. And I think I started finding a leaning towards people who are looking for their purpose while just going through education. Because many times, all of us bought into the narrative that go to school, get a career, pursue that particular career. But I started seeing people within the university space who are challenging that notion. One of the university mates I had was Billy Odhiambo, who's one of the big rugby stars. I was like, okay, this guy's a rugby star. He's still doing his university. He's finding in expressions. Why not share some of these particular stories? So for me, how I found myself was like, let me just be courageous enough, get a camera, have these conversations with people, try to pursue this. And then while at it, I always just like say I met Larry Mado, because I remember that back then the trend was the big. I introduced myself. I'm like, I have this interest in media. Why not come just shadow you, see how things happen? So most of my Fridays, I think when I was in university, I used to go, instead of going out, I used to go to the Nation, go at the director's booth, just see what he's doing. And then that element of interest came to be. I told my mom I like this thing. My mom paid for me for college to study media. At that point, I did it for a month. I realized most of the things I'm being taught, I can actually learn them on YouTube. I stopped doing it and started doing it by myself. Started up a production company during that point with some of the friends, and then also learned from some of the teammates we started having. So that's why my interest came to be sort of like a journey whereby one act led to another, and then another and another, and then that's how things came to be. Yes.
Yeah. Is there how do I say it, a moment or an experience in your hosting career that has had a profound effect on who you are today?
I think every experience has been different, because I think I was just thinking about it. To date, I think I've done almost more than 300 interviews the last couple. And I've met different people who have different stories to share. And I always say, sometimes let me look at the last one I did like last week. There's a lady I met. She's called Lorna. She runs a company called Binti Pads. It's a friend of mine. I think Hope Kid is the one who suggested. I was like, oh, this is an interesting story. Let me just have a conversation with her. And sometimes some of these people, I just meet them on set and have a conversation. And she shared with me her story on how the turmoils she went to be who she is. And I was like, I think I've never done a show whereby it's been, you realize how lucky and fortunate you are where you are. Because some of the people, when she share these stories, like, she's very beautiful, she's very intelligent, but until she tells you her story, you'll just presume she's just the lucky girls. But when she told me her story, is like, at 11, she lost her dad, who was the sole breadwinner, just all of a sudden. 2 weeks later, she lost the only brother she had. Her family moved from being stable to living in the slums. And then at 17, she lost her mother, who was literally she was suffering from depression and trying to take care of her. So you can try to imagine, at 17, you've had all these losses, but you still have to make out of your life. And she's doing quite well. She became an air hostess, then came into business. Now she's starting to go into this particular manufacturing of sanitary towels. So you realize some of these experiences, I don't know how, but most of the guests I have, they get to express themselves and you get to learn from them, because every guest is a pillar towards my knowledge, first of all, because I always say we're having a conversation, and also to the audiences. So I think the last one was a good one. Also, just when I look back, I do an event called the Business Conquest out of my first book. The last time I had Michael Joseph. So you can try to imagine someone you literally had so many stories about, who comes just for like 2 hours, candidly share their stories and just share with you like how their journey has been. Because I find that every conversation that you have, there's a different lesson that you learn. So for me, I think when I'm the season of filming and doing content, I even hardly read, because all of the guests have a different story that I'm like, oh, it rings to my mind. It's a lesson, it's a knowledge, and it's a deposit to me, because every guest has been a deposit to me on what to do, what not to be, which direction to take, which direction not to take, because everybody has a different particular perspective, and every guest is always a pleasure to have a conversation with.
Yeah. But now you have a lot of things. It's a nice cocktail of things that ideally people would pick one and run with.
Yes.
How are you managing to have them in one basket?
I look at it, I think even I have a quote, you're not one. And that's one of the things I don't believe in. Like, we always this thing, or this notion that the world has given us, that you should do one thing and just do it all fully. To some extent, it works for those it works for. But for me, I always believe that as a human being, there's so many different expressions. I always try to refer to the story in the Bible about the persons with the 5 talents, 4 talents, and the 1. You always find that person who has 1, most of the time they actually bury themselves only in it. But I find it has a bigger notion that you actually see, in the sense that when the master came back, the one with 1 talent just wanted to hide it so that he doesn't lose it. And that's what most people do. I have 1 gift, I have this 1 talent, I bury myself only into it. To some extent it may work, to some extent it may not work. But sometimes many of us overlook the different gifts that you have and not finding the full expression out of it. Yeah. I have friends, primarily, they used to paint at one point in life, but they stopped doing it. Or maybe they used to sing, they stopped doing it because maybe things didn't open, because you're just concentrating on one. And then if this one doesn't happen, you find yourself that you're in a role that, like, ikufanyika, life hasn't happened for me. But if you find different expressions, I think you find different exposure, different learning. Let's say for me, one of the core things, I liked writing. I used to write articles and all that stuff as a correspondent. But over time, I wanted to find an expression through authorship. I like leadership. I found an expression through business and some of the things that I do. I like having conversations. I find an expression through doing a TV show, doing content and the likes. I like building and creating things. I find expression through different businesses. At the end of it, I look at it in the sense that my main objective is to find my full expression, and through this you get to grow as a human being. That's the most important thing, because if I just did one thing, I'll be limited to only just one scope of mind. But if you try different things, because I don't do things for the sake of doing it, I do it because I have a why. Everything that I put my hands on, I have a why as to why I was doing it. That's why I think when I get the revelation that my purpose is to create, teach, and guide, everything that I do is in that particular scope.
And in case you're joining us right now, today we're hosting Ian Denis, a host, an award-winning host and journalist, an entrepreneur, has done a lot of events on business and entrepreneurship. And you're going to get to interact with that today on this show today. But Ian, I want to transition to your bookshelf. Which are the 3 books that has had the most impact on your life and or career?
All right. There are quite a number of books. So most of them, so my shelf, as you can see, it's not as big because people stole my books, a lot of them.
Guys, if you stole Ian's book, please return.
So primarily, most of my books, I read them online.
Yes.
But from the ones I have here, the ones that literally stand out from the ones I have here, one is this one, Never Eat Alone. It was actually a gift from Eugene Bugwa. It's one of those books that I just, unless you're very, very close to me, I'll give it to you. But it's a book that I hold tight to because it's a very, very interesting book. So it's a book by a gentleman called Keith Ferrazzi. So it's a book about just how you should network and build relationships, which is actually a core thing. Because all of us, in this life, I think you can only succeed by the kind of relationship you can be able to hold. So the book, this literally just guides you through it. How are you able to build relationship? How are you able to build relationship that also benefit you and give out to you? How are you able to network? So which is a very, very good book for any person, especially if you want to, start your journey towards networking and building your relationships. It's just a good book because in this life, you never eat alone. Everybody wants to come to a table whereby someone offers something, but also at the same time, a table that you offer something. So the book literally gives you strategies. How do you want to go? Let's say, I think one of the chapters, if I remember right, because it's been like a year since I've reread it. Let's say if you want to go meet a CEO somewhere, what's the best way to go about it? I think I remember it's about how do you go introduce yourself to the personal assistant, build a relationship with them, because the personal assistant, maybe to a CEO or a network you want to build, is primarily your door, your opening. If you want to join a particular club, especially to the wealthy that you want to network with, how are you able to get yourself into that particular door? How are you able to build a relationship? From this book, one of the core things that I learned, and maybe it was retaliated in my book, is that if you want to build a relationship with somebody, it's never about what you're supposed to take. It's not about what you're going to take. It's about what you can give. And I see it a lot with a lot of people who want to network. Oh, nataka kazi. But I'm like, what exactly are you offering? What exactly it is that you're putting on the table? Because relationships have to be mutually beneficial. If you come to somebody, it means that person has something to offer. So if they have something to offer, what do you as yourself have to offer to them in order for you to build a good relationship with them? So I think that's one of the core things in terms of just basically just getting to network and building the relationships that you need, because this life, everything is by relationships.
But just out of curiosity, because most of traditional African setups are cultured around food. People eat together. Food brings people together. And when you're looking at it, if I'm looking at it based on the examples you've cited, it would look like now food will be the next thing. It will not be the first thing. When I'm meeting Ian, before we get to decide whether we're going to eat or invite each other, either he invites me or I invite him to the next table where we're going to eat, there has to be a conversation. But I'm just curious to know, how has the author related food with what you're talking about, networking and building relationships?
I think the key thing in that particular book, if I remember right, because it's been just a while since I read it, by the time someone comes to a table to share food with you, you have to be, there's an essence of value that you bring to the table. Because now at the end of the day, food is it becomes like a medium or an environment that creates a kind of conversation. But what's more important is what brings this person to the table. Many times we believe that if I buy you lunch, you're going to come for it. But I can afford my own lunch. I want to have lunch with someone who we can spend time to literally decipher something that's of meaning also to me. In the instance whereby, let's say I know you're very passionate about, maybe a particular charity. the only thing, and charity. So, and for me, maybe I have these particular skills. So primarily, these books walks you through that path for me to now meet with you. Probably, what's it called? Maybe a lunch setting can be just an example of a setting you can actually use. But at the same time, how can I be able to use what I have to be of value to you, and you to see the value I have, for us to be able to now build a kind of relationship. So the whole thing about the book is about never eating alone is this essence whereby how can I be able to project the value I have in a very meaningful way and be able to build a relationship that's worth the while, in the instance whereby once I'm comfortable with you, I can be able to have lunch with you.
Yeah.
You see, many times I think maybe because you've been in the industry for quite a while, maybe people, I want mentorship on this. They want something from you. But you realize you'll not be as energetic to literally respond to that, because you always get this a lot.
Yes.
But if someone tells you, I know you're into production, maybe I'm good at maybe a particular part, I've learned the new AI skills, I'd like to offer them to you, you'll be open to actually go for lunch.
That's
because
true.
You've had something that rings a
It's
bell to you
interesting
and
to
connects to you.
Yeah.
So you'll be open to say, let's have lunch. It will be okay.
Yeah.
But in the instance, just someone wants to come and take from you, hey, nataka job, nataka hii, I'm like, all of us shut our ears from that.
Yeah.
I remember actually just this week, there's a project I'm actually trying to work on. And I had a conversation with this gentleman. I won't mention the name, but you're just telling me that what's it called? I think he has this, this mentality whereby the rich owe you something. So he's telling me, Ian, naendanga kwa wadosi, alafu niwaambia nimetoka Kawangore, kitu ya kwanza tu hataki kusikia, atanisikiza alafu atanipea tu fare ya kurudi, ya idafu ya kutosha ya kurudi nyumbani. Him goes to them expecting that he'll be given money. Him goes to them that he expects that, what's it called? Hata he was telling me there's a project nataka kujenga nyumba, yeye nataka unongelee na watu kunijengewa nyumba, but I'm just trying to decipher to him. The rich won't listen to you, or maybe won't be willing to give you what you want because you have not offered them value. Just by virtue that I relate to an uncle does not mean that an uncle owes you anything.
Entitled
most of us are entitled to that.
Yeah.
But you don't build a relationship. You'll find that this same person you're saying is stingy to you is very, very charitable to other people, because other people offer value. And that's primarily one of the things this particular book deciphers. How exactly can you be able to offer value to people, to be able to see it and be able to even to be as charitable to you? Because you only give to people, give where they see this value. Yeah. And people always close their heart because sometimes everybody's used to getting, we are used to acquiring. So in that particular instance, the gentleman, yes, life hasn't worked to you the way you want, but when you go to this person for a conversation, what exactly are you offering? Set it because that you're my uncle, I owe you anything. I can have billions, but me, I'm like, if you have nothing to offer for me, why should I care?
Wow. So that we don't take so much time. The second book.
I think let me get the older one here, because I got this when I was in university.
Yes.
This book is so old. Oh my goodness, because I've read it so many times. Like, I think this book should retire. This is the old version of the Blue Ocean Strategy. I read it and but I also have the new version here, the Blue Ocean Strategy. So it's one of those particular books that changes your mind, especially as to how you think around business, because I'm in that particular innovation space. It's a book that I encourage, especially if you're in business and you're trying to build a product or you're trying to build a business, you need to have your hands on it. It's a book that gives you hindsight, because it's a book based on research and gives you a metric as to how exactly you can make yourself different. So the whole thing about Blue Ocean Strategy is about the red ocean and the blue ocean. The red ocean is a market space that's a lot of competition that goes into place, and then the blue ocean is how exactly can you make yourself different as compared to the red ocean. Every industry has a red ocean. We're all competing on the same things, but what different are you able to do in order for you to ensure that your business or your products you're doing is actually of value to the client? And one of the elements about the blue ocean is not about, it's about how can you offer the highest value at the most moderate or least cost to the clientele. Because the client wants to receive a value, but this value has to be attached to a cost that's actually also, what's it called? Affordable and also significant to them.
Yeah.
And primarily it's also about the metrics that you actually look in a particular industry, and how can you curate a different kind of metric to make you stand out in every particular kind of business. So I think it's one of those books. Every once in a while, I reread it, and I never want to even give it out, but I always recommend it a lot, because it's one of, if you want to get into business, if you want to be challenged in terms of how you think, I think it's one of the books that you need to read.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that you've mentioned that, because our immediate previous guest, Mr. Bule, who is the founder of Nuri, also talked about it, because he talked extensively about setting up a business and the challenges that come with
setting up a business. Yeah.
How do you set yourself apart? How do you differentiate yourself from everybody else who might be offering something similar to what you're offering? And I think to our listeners and viewers, that I think is a good assurance when you hear different people from different walks of life just united with the same message and objective. I think it's a very good learning point to every person who is trying to start a business out there. What value, what different thing are you offering the market at an affordable cost?
Yeah, the thing is about cost, because
Yes.
I think you look at it, and cost, it's relative, but all at the same time, when you say cost, it's that the client can actually associate with the value that comes with the cost. Like, because cost is also, what's it called? There's also perceptive value. So whatever that you're offering to a client, do they feel that they've gotten the full value out of it? And that's not the question that you need to ask yourself. So if I bought, maybe I buy a book for 1,000 shillings, am I getting that value for the 1,000 shillings? If I'm buying a shirt for 1,000 shillings, am I really getting that value? Because many times as a business, you always think about the profit I'm going to make. But at the same time, if you try to put yourself in the sense that, is it of value to the client? Because if it's of value to the client, primarily you're going to multiply your clients. The client's going to become a repeat client because the client is getting the value.
Yeah.
But if a client feels that I've been ripped off,
Yeah.
primarily you'll try to look somewhere else. And you find that businesses that have been able to create value, at a perceived, create value, but also that value is perceived by the client, they're able to sustain the business and be able to grow the business over a long period of time. Yeah. So I think that's one of the core things that I learned from this particular book.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then your third.
I'm trying to, it's a weird book, because it has a story to it.
The River and the Source.
The River and the Source.
Wow.
I never did it as a set book.
Yeah.
And the person who recommended this book to me was Jalango. So, and it has a story to it. So I had a season with COVID, during the COVID times. And then during that season, when I was admitted in the hospital, I had my mind was only racing with the idea. So the idea came into the sense that if my season with COVID would have been my last season, what is it will be a gift that I leave to the world? Because all of us eventually are going to die. But what exactly is it that you're going to leave to the world? And I remember during that season, I remember seeing an old man who have unfortunately passed during that period. I was like, my mind was just racing. I'm like, he's died. Maybe he has so many stories that he never told. So an urge in me came for authorship. So initially, I didn't want to author anything about myself because I was 20, 29 then. So I was like, what do I have to offer this particular world? So I was like, but I can do biographies for people. So I was like, I started approaching celebrities, and one of them was Jalango. And I was like, I can actually do a book, because at that point I'd helped a friend do his book. I was like, it's not hard to do it. I was like, I've helped a friend, but I was not ready to tell my story back then. So I talked to Jalango, I convinced him. I was like, cool, we can do it. But I want to do a book out of this particular format, The River and the Source. So I got myself this particular book, read this story. It's such a wonderful story. Because it's about a story about Margaret and how exactly it passed through the different generations, how this generation all shifted from this other one. And I just like the context is how this particular book has been written. But it's a real life story, but it makes you immerse into it, the traditional aspect into it. I loved it. So after reading this book, I actually did the first chapter for Jalango, but I think that time we got into election and stuff. We were not able to finish that particular project. But it was this book that actually eventually just sparked me that I also had stories of entrepreneurs through my journey as a TV host and also as a business coach. I was like, why not now tell these stories and put it out to the world? So that's what led to my first book. It was just having read this book and being inspired by the story out of this. I was like, why not also tell stories? Because it's such a nice book. I wish I read it as a set book during my time in high school.
But when you now go into the text of the book, what are the parts that stood out? I consider you new generation as opposed to the story in this book. But what is that thing that stood out for you in the story of Margaret?
When I remember the book, I think I just look at it in terms of the impact of every generation to the other generation. And through this book, primarily one of the things I always hold into myself is that I have something to play for the next generation. Like every generation has a significant role to play. And sometimes as human beings, we never look towards the impact that your decisions right now, the decisions that you make right now, the directions you take right now have on the next generation. Margaret came to be because her previous generation and enabled her to go to to study and pursue what she wanted. But you find that the previous generations were uneducated. What they believed in was very, very different. So primarily, what I get, the overall overarching message through this particular book is that be present in your generation, but make sure that you make decisions that are of impact to the next generations. So I think that's one of the core things that I live in. And I think that's one of the thoughts that I remember out of this particular book. What am I doing, being present in this particular generation, to ensure that when I leave, the generation that I leave behind are actually of impact and better placed. So what are the decisions am I able to make? What kind of legacy am I able to leave? And how can I ensure that the next generation are well enabled? Many of us will live a life whereby it's just about me, it's about what I experienced, about how I feel it, and living just the way you want to do. I'm like, I have a business idea, sitaifanya. Who's there to lose? Oh, I'm supposed to go to do my master's. I'm like, nisipoifanya, who will not benefit? But some of these particular decisions, as much as when you contextualize it to ourselves, they're not significant. But when you put it in the instance of a generation, you can see it. And through this book, I reflected upon my generation, right? Maybe as far as my grandparents, when I look at it, my grandparents were not as educated, but at least they had an effort to educate my parents, despite the poverty they grew in. So my parents, they had the education, which enabled them break the cycle of poverty. My parents, having understood the importance of education, what it can open, they actually enable us now to study in the best schools that we can. And for us now, and actually in an environment it was not impoverished, at least they enabled us, because at least walisomeshwa wakapata kazi, we grew up in a middle class kind of society. So now it's for me to ensure that with the education I have, having grown in the background I have, how can I now create maybe generational wealth? How can I, become a pillar for the generation I want to bring in? My parents, my grandparents went through the colonial era, walikuwa wamekaliwa. My parents went through, Moi's period, went to Kibaki's period, whereby politically they couldn't speak. Now I'm in a generation as a millennial. I think there's a flag even I have here. May have been part of this mandamanos. Because I believe primarily as a generation, every generation has a role to play.
Yeah.
For them, they stuck through it. But for me as a generation, I'm like, I'm ready to fight for Kenya, ready to die for it. But at least through our generation, our parents' generation, in some of the stories through that particular generation, they're able now to find a voice. Even I have, I think, Raila's book somewhere here. I was just trying to read and understand during that period. But you find that, understand that generation, what were their limitations, how can you learn from them to enable also, enable the other generation.
Yeah.
Even I remember even just speaking, because it's a relevant topic, speaking to what we are going through as a country, realize their generation, they were oppressed a lot. But you're luckily enough, even this particular generation, as much as there's still the essence of oppression, but you have the ability to become vocal out of the things that are going into place. So for me, I always believe that as a generation, there's so many different roles to play. There's a role to play for your generation to come next. There's a role to play for your country too, which you also have to play, because this is the environment. You want a country that's actually prosperous for all of us.
Yeah.
But also for you, maybe your children and the family to come into place. We always, I think, in the religious circle, there's this thing about generational curses. I don't fully believe in it, or maybe I believe in it in a very small extent, but I always believe you hold the power to now, quote unquote, break all these curses by the actions that you do. In actions is what exactly propels the curses that are actually within there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we live about the limitations. In our time, whatever, maybe Moi didn't want me to speak. Any person who speaks used to be abducted. But in our generation, I'm like, I can speak. If I'm abducted, I'm okay with it, but I have the voice that I have. My parents also, maybe they just did up to maybe Form 4. So Mrs. Fanyadi Form 4. No, but in our generation, whatever, I can go do a master's. And I'm just happy. I think I'm the first one in our family to do a master's, and hopefully I'll be the first one to do a PhD. Because you want to break the barriers. My father got me, from having grown up in poverty and limitations in Homa Bay, took me to Light Academy, once the best school in the country. So why not now me, when I get my children, how can I get them to the best schools and the best university? Because you have to break all these things, because you can't live the same narrative through and through and through. It doesn't make sense.
Sometimes history haunts people. But how important is it for us to understand where we're coming from, both as an individual and also as a generation?
It's important to understand history, because history creates context to what exactly you can actually build on. For my master's project, because I did a master's in digital journalism, one of the core things I delved a lot is in history, because I was looking at the are the narratives that the newspapers actually carried out once Moi passed on. And in that particular element, I got to understand a lot of history, what happened in the 80s, in the 90s, and all that stuff. But one thing I've realized with the understanding of history, it makes you now fully aware of what's happening, and it gives you the why. One of the core things I personally believe in, I never want to move or I never want to make decisions or actions without understanding the why. And sometimes, even with this particular movement with the Gen Zs and everything that's happening on, there's a why. And this why primarily is always provoked. So I think understanding history gives you the why, and having the why, it actually informs your actions. And these actions are actually not just by the basis of just moving because people are moving, but you understand the full context. You understand that at one point you had a president who primarily, maybe due to the scenarios that went into place, oppressed the people. And if these people did not speak, we would have been in the same situation. But you had people who came out and spoke, and primarily things actually got to change and created a revolution. So primarily when we see history repeating itself, we understand the why. If we do not do these actions, the history will repeat itself. And there's nothing as bad as allowing history to repeat itself if we can actually be able to become an impediment towards just preventing the bad history from repeating itself.
But just looking at it in context, is history repeating itself after these Gen Z protests?
Yes, it is. To some extent, history is literally repeating itself, because you find that in the political class that's there, it's primarily a political class that were built by the previous generation. So the tendency of the previous generation is primarily what's repeating itself, and you find that primarily the status quo that was then is the status quo that is right now, and primarily what exactly is happening is that I think as a generation, one of the core things about us is that no one is hungry to get into power or maybe do a handshake. All people want is just to create an environment whereby everybody can just be able to thrive.
Yeah.
Because one thing that we can't put ourselves on is the impact of politics in our economics and the impact of politics in people's destiny. When a president comes to power, he has 5 years as per the constitution. 5 years is very, very pivotal in anyone's life. 5 years, if I'm getting to form 1, I'll have finished form 4. If I'm getting to university, I will have finished university. If I'm from university, should be in a point of looking for a job. So these years are very, very important. So if imprudent decisions are made during that period of time, at the end of the day, as much as we may not look at it so, destinies are being impacted.
Yeah.
And that's one of the core things I'm always for. Or rather I believe in, is that any kind of leadership is supposed to create an environment where people thrive, not where people are supposed to be oppressed. So if people are oppressed and destinies are not be able to live to their fruition, primarily what's the essence then of leadership?
Yeah.
It's not about who's my person, who's my not. It's like saying you're married, right? And then you become an oppressor in your house. So instead of your wife getting to achieve their destiny, your wife is literally going to be worse off. So what's the essence? What's the purpose that you've served? Because leadership is supposed to serve a particular purpose. And this particular purpose is to ensure that as the people that you're leading, how can they become much better?
Yeah.
Are the decisions prudent to ensure that people are becoming much better? Because I think as a generation, no one cares about which positions my tribe or no one cares about it. People just want to have systems that are working and an environment where all of us can thrive, regardless of whatever tribe that you come from. And for me, that's one of the core things I believe in. Just as a leader, can you just make prudent decisions for the essence of your people, as in for the people to achieve their destiny and people to be able to live to their full fruition? I find it very sad. I think at the point of doing this, I think the president was saying that if you want to, I'm getting you jobs outside and I'll pay for tickets. But I'm like, how now? If you can't create them here, if you can't create an environment where people can thrive, because people who are out of this country, not everybody wants to be out of this country.
Ian, what has angered you the most with the leadership of the country now that prompted you to
I think it's
get up and pick that flag?
The insensitivity and just lack of touch with what's going on. And sometimes I understand him to a particular extent, because for him, he has not lived life as a normal person. He was born into a political class and does not experience life as anybody else. So me, I think that's what angered me, the insensitivity that has gone on through this period of time. Like you just want to, started off with just trying to tax your people and making decisions that are very, very insensitive and not being in touch with what's going on with the environment. I think that's what has just really angered me, in the sense that as a leader, one of the core things you're supposed to do is to listen. that's the essence of it. You're supposed to listen because you're supposed to do what people want and to make prudent decisions for the benefit of the people. But at the end of it, it's just making decisions for the political class and just to try to, satisfy your ego, maybe just to satisfy your essence as a person. I think that's the only challenge I have. I'm like, because I always believe by the time you rise to leadership, sometimes there's something we can actually learn from you, but if you're not able to actualize what exactly it is that you promised your people and what exactly pulled the masses towards you and not being able to do that, I think that's what has really angered me.
And guys, if at all you're joining us now, this is what's on your shelf. And today we have Ian Denis, who's authored 2 amazing books. I've read one. Gonna get to know about the second one in a bit. But what are you listening to? And where are you watching or listening to this from? Feel free to chat with us down here on this video, leave a comment below, and also on our social media platforms. We are on all the social media platforms as what's on your shelf, on TikTok, on Instagram, and also reach me on X at Michael Black. And Ian also will be sharing his handles in a bit. But also just looking at these whole situation, Ian, as I close down that conversation. What is next for the young people of this country? Because where we are at today, it looks like the young people have lost. It was, yes, the voice was heard. Yes, there are certain concessions that the leadership seemed to make as a result of those protests. Yes, the cabinet was fired.
And then rehired.
But the cabinet has been rehired. And it has gotten to a place where some of the people who were most aggrieved by just being appointed, or some of the people, their tribesmen being appointed to the cabinet, seems to have changed tune. But the young people of this country who are still agitating for leadership, Ian, who said no, the leadership of the country must wake up. What is next?
First of all, I think this particular problem that's happening right now is because of the inaction that happened in 2022. There's a lot of Gen Zs who never came to vote. I voted myself. I think some of the Gen Zs I know, they didn't want to vote because they were saying that the two who were vying had no different, or were not different to each other, which actually I think it's a wrong notion. Because you look at it, every leader, despite being of the political class, there's a difference every leader makes.
Yeah.
Once
but
given the baton.
Wajakoya. There was
No. But
this other guy,
which is
Ruben Kigame.
It was a decision they were supposed to make, but many people didn't vote, which primarily I find it wrong, first of all. Because for me, one of the arguments I was talking to people at that point, I'm like, if you vote Raila, there's no difference. If you are to Ruto, because Ruto has been there, because it was a 2-horse race, let's just put it as it is. But sometimes you never know what a leader is able to do unless you pass a baton to them. Because Kibaki was also at one point a vice president to Moi. But we saw in his first term what Kibaki was able to do by just having that particular baton. So I think one of the core things as the Gen Zs and millennials, just get yourself out and vote. Because once the president has once the constitutional powers, he can make any decision that he wants. Because those who did not vote enabled him just as much as those who voted for him. And that's one of the core things that people need to do. Like in 2027, let's ensure that you do this. The second thing is that as a country, for me personally, is that let's just move away from the tribal lines. Any person who comes to seek a vote, what exactly have they done? For me personally, I did not vote for the president because I'd never seen anything he's ever done as an individual. Because I read part of his book, I went through his history, and also I think I don't have his book here, but I also went through Raila's book, and I see, and I'm not being tribal. I was born a Luo, but I never want to define myself as a Luo. I'm just a Kenyan. And when I vote, I always want to vote beyond what my tribal line says. Because I think in everything, how we vote, you look at it, what exactly have you done to deserve an opportunity? Because if you were to ask yourself, amongst the political class, if you were to appoint any of them as your CEO, who would you vote for? If it was not about your tribe. And you see, as a country, we just need to move away from this. Vote for someone for the history they have had. In politics, there's always propaganda. Ni wetu, nini. But just go deep down. Amefanya nini? If he has never done anything or stood for anything, never give that person a chance. Because when you go through, and those are the two candidates, if you're just honestly just go through them.
But I would say that about almost all the politicians I see around, from the governors to the senators,
but you need to ask yourself,
the
what
members
have
of
they done?
parliament.
Yes,
to
you see,
the
that's the problem.
MCAs.
We voted most of the people by virtue of a tribe or by virtue of a party, not by virtue of their history. Because some of these people, when you just go deep into it, you'll see what they have done, and you can see the rot that's there. But all of it, when you sanctify people with a tribe or because it's from my party, that's when we have those golden calves, whereby Nimtuetu, which I think is a problem.
You see, Ian, the big challenge I have today is because as young people have risen and young people are calling out the president to appoint young people to the cabinet, when Uhuru and Ruto were coming into the leadership, they also gave themselves off as the young, fresh leadership.
I think it was I don't think it was young and fresh. That
And
was
they
because
say-
ICC was there at that point.
Yes. And they talked about old people
Yeah.
to be driven to.
Yeah.
And these young people, we understand the needs of the young people, but nothing has changed. In fact, if at all, it has gotten worse. You're a numbers guy.
Yeah.
I was looking at the debt that currently we owe as a country.
But let me put it this way. I think even Uhuru should not have happened, because at that point it was a narrative about ICC.
Yes.
Watu wetu wanafaa kupelekwa ndani. It was just a narrative. And even one of the books I'm trying to work on is how to create and sell narratives, because politics is a game of narratives. And once you're able to sell a particular narrative, everything else that's about you will be faced into that. Who ni hustler? Who ni mtu wetu? So everything about him won't be questioned, because they have sold this narrative so well, in a sense that you can't judge this. But I think where we are as a country, and I think I like this essence of revolution, is that we can be able to decipher. Tunaweza toa idea mtu, like the cop who shot people can be able to say, hey, this is the history of this person has. We can now touch into place. And I think that's one of the core things we need to do as a country. Everybody who stands up for any particular position, let's just put their dirty linen and their good linen out in public for us now to make prudent decisions. In the essence that when you're voting for this person, you find that it's their narrative that overwhelms everybody. We never now look into the history that this person has. And I think next time the people who run, we need to, they need to be deciphered. And some of the institutions like the ESCC needs to prevent some of the people from running from office. Because you see, at the end of it, and let's not lie to it, politics is about also money and the influence you're able to build through your money. And most of the young people who can actually stand for these particular positions may not be able to have the financial muscle, maybe the influence to build out of it, because of how the political game has been played over the years. But
Yeah.
if you have been able to now decipher the individuals who are be able to run, and also maybe encourage more people to run into these particular political positions, we'll be able to get better leaders.
Was this your first election voting?
No. The first election I did was 2013.
2013.
Yes. So 2013, 2017, 2022. I've done 3.
So, Ian, you can see the pattern. We are very sober when elections are a couple of years away.
Yeah.
And when the elections are closer
We become stupid.
and the money factor,
Yeah.
those politicians, like today, there is a daylight loot
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
virtually
Yeah,
every
everything.
sector of society.
Especially mtu
today.
wetu. Ama tulimwombea.
And we look like we are comfortable with that. And especially if your person or your tribe's
Is in party.
person
Yeah.
is the one looting, then certain voices go quiet. If your tribesmen are pushed into certain places. But now when I look at all these things, Ian, you've read about Raila. In this whole Gen Z protest and all this thing, Raila looks to be the person who's gained the most.
No, he's lost.
What's your analysis of this situation? And why do you think he has lost?
So for me, how I look at it, I was supporting him because I think I've read his history, I've gone through his history and what he's done for this country. I think he's done quite a lot for this country. You can't take it away from him. But I think some of the decisions he's made, especially over the last couple of years, from 2007, agreeing to be with Kibaki, and I think, okay, let me just try to put into a place, because I think at that 2007, where was I? I think I was joining Form 1, if I'm not wrong. At least I had a kind of conscience. Kibaki lost that election, stole from it. Martha supported Kibaki, and they created, what's it called? People died at that point. So, sasa tunajifanya tumesahau. Hata Martha Karua akijeka hapa, sasa tunajifanya tumesahau. But he was part of the people who actually, for me, I feel, tainted Kibaki's legacy. Because
Yes.
Kibaki's forcing himself on the
that
seat for me.
swearing
I was like,
in
nah,
happened
at night. So we can't forget that. It's part of our history. So even Martha, I'm like, as much as Martha wants to remain as a saint, honestly, Martha is not. He was part of the killing. Even for me, Kibaki's legacy, just from the first year to the first, the first term. Second term, I'm like, it was just Waliiba. So that time Raila was forced for a handshake. The second time that happened, as Kenyans, what's it called? It's about a merger of two communities, Kalenjin, Kikuyu, Mtuetu, because ICC came into place. And the people who were suspect became presidential candidates because why? A narrative was sold and they came into it. We know what happened in terms of debt. And then the person who was the vice president over 10 years, all of a sudden became a saint and tried to put themselves into government. So for me, one of the core things I feel that, especially a political move that Raila did wrong, was the essence of now trying to join in just to fit into a government that you're not a part of. And at the same time, the essence of doing that is just, it's money. So primarily people who support you and people who are actually after you, you become greedy and forget what exactly it is and what you stood for and what you've built a narrative as having stood for your own selfish interest, which is also very wrong. Because you've already amassed enough wealth. Yeah. Why would you have done, what's it called, a handshake with Uhuru? Yes, the country was shaking and all that stuff, but like, you can tell your people, tuacha malize munipea mara ya pili. So even this time I was like, no, you shouldn't have done it. Why would you want to do it? Because you can't get into someone's mess for the sake of your own interest. And people died and you're not speaking about it. So one of the things I have is that the neglect that the leadership in all Uhuru's regime, Kibaki's regime, even Ruto's regime, they have we don't value life. See, during 2017, people were killed by Uhuru's regime. No one talked about it. No one was put to book. And the leadership will move on because Wakubwa was shaken into place, which is also wrong for Raila, not having stood for it. You just put your interest into place. Even this time, over 60 people have been killed for nothing. Me, I was part of the protest. During that particular protest, if anybody even tries to raise Mawe to Naka, as in us, maybe we were part of it, we're like, no, don't do it because we are peaceful. But people were shot. Mothers have lost. Families have lost their own. And then you don't speak about it. You don't put for the justice. But you, after self-interest, for me, I was like, nah, it's wrong. Because at the end of it, as a leader, you must stand for something. And one of the core things is that you need to stand for justice. And for me, I found that it's wrong because you never stood for justice. Yeah. Which is one of the core things that you need to stand for.
And what's your take if you're viewing and following this conversation? What's your take on this whole conversation on the recent protest? And funny enough, it's not only in Kenya, it has happened in several parts of the world. But for the youth of this country, what's next? If you're watching us and you've been part of this conversation, please raise your voice and let's figure out, what are we looking at as a people? What's next? Remember, this is what's on your shelf coming to you here on YouTube. Have you subscribed? Have you liked? Please feel free to share this to your networks and to your friends. And Ian Denis, who's seated with us today here, is an author, an award-winning host, a business coach, an entrepreneur. And he's going to be talking to us about his 2 books that he has authored and the learnings he's picked up along the way. He's interviewed more than 300 people, as he said earlier in this interview. But also, one of his books, he's also interviewed some of the key people and celebrities who've done amazing things in this country. And he's going to be talking about that today. But to you who is listening to us today, what is standing out for you in this conversation? What part of this history of this republic do you relate to? And what are you doing as an individual? How are you taking part to ensure that the future that we are facing is better than the current situation that we are in? Continue following us on our social media platforms. We are on TikTok at What's On Your Shelf. We're also on Instagram at What's On Your Shelf. But you can also follow me on X. I'm at Michael Black. And Ian, what's your X handle?
I'm not very big. Ian Denis KE _ I'm not big on X, but all other platforms, Ian Denis Network.
Ian Denis Network. But he's going to be talking to us about his books. He has 2 books, Business Conquest and Food for Thought. Ian.
Yes.
Tell us about Business Conquest.
So Business Conquest, primarily, it was a book primarily influenced by some of the interactions and the journeys that I've been a part of, especially for the entrepreneurs. So primarily, I wanted to share it. I had this book in 2 angles. One, share stories of Kenyan entrepreneurs across different particular aspects of entrepreneurship, but at the same time, as a business coach, give out insights across this particular aspect. So there's a case study around family, how to run a family business, and I did a case study on the Victoria Furnitures, how as a company they've been able to now transition successfully across 4 particular generations. So out of their story, I share insights as to what, if you're trying to set up a family business, how can you go about it? If you're trying to do a side hustles, I share stories of people who actually successfully run side hustles. One of the stories that I like sharing is around a gentleman called Coleman Otage, who runs a school called Brookville Academy that now has over 1,000 students, that I'm actually a proud board member of the school. But I share how he was able to set up this institution while still working full-time at the time and be able to derive a success out of it. Because many times, all of us wants to do a side hustle for the sake of just getting extra income. So there are quite a number of chapters around it, but all of this have been influenced in the sense that I can provoke your thought, especially if you want to go into the world of business, and just share lessons that you can actually be able to learn from it.
Yeah.
Yes.
The style of writing I found very creative. And I like that every chapter had something different to talk about and talked about a different person. But I think one of the key things that stood out most for me is the forward was done by Chris Kirubi. How did you meet Chris and how did this happen?
So for me, when I go into any journey, because I wanted to go into the authorship journey, because at that time I mentioned you my story. I wanted to do biographies, but by the time mtu akai chini anakuuliza, what have you done before? I've not written any books. It's like, okay, so prove to me. I was like, it's just too much. I don't like simping. It's like, let me now try to put my story. So that one day I remember it just hit me. So once I had the whole idea and I'd put it, it's not the most perfect book, I always say, but I was like, let me share it to a few people who I wanted an endorsement, right? And one of them was Dr. Chris Kirubi. I was like, I looked up to him. I'd met him through some events, but I now had this contact. I told him, I have this book. I'll love you to have a look at it. If it makes sense, I'll love you to do a forward. And then it was like, once I sent it, I was like, I forgot about it. Then 3 months down the line, I was like, through the PA at the time, Grace, who used to work with him, I was like, yeah, he saw it. He went through it. He liked it and he gave me the forward. I was like, I was just very privileged. And it was just like 6 months to his death. And I was like, okay, I think that's the thing I can remember him for what exactly did it for.
Did you have a chance to meet him in person?
Well, after I'd sent him the forward, it was during that period he was sick, so I didn't have a sit down with him. That time he was actually in and out in hospital, but I sent him the draft I'd done at the point. He went through it and then they communicated to me and then gave me to that. But I think for me, it was, actually, the reason I did the book, I think in 2021, I delayed it, I thought it would get better, and then during the launch it comes into place, but unfortunately things didn't come to place.
Yeah.
So that time he was actually in ICU, sick and all that stuff. So to that period, and also in self-isolation, I couldn't meet him because of the COVID period at that point. Yeah, so we just communicated via phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The late Chris is one of the most outstanding business minds in this country. And I think a lot of people associate him with aggressive businessmen, those people who go for it and go for it. But you as somebody who's also in this coaching and entrepreneurship space, what is that one outstanding thing you'd say you learned or picked from him?
I think one thing I learned is just how to build a business legacy, regardless of what people say. I think once someone has left the world, there's so many different narratives that can be created because it's not up to you to share this particular narrative. We can say all we want, but I think one of the core things that you can learn from him is just how can you build a business empire and how can you build it sustainably whereby it remains even after you've gone. I think that's one of the core legacies I can actually just say I learned from him in the sense that from what I've seen, because I wouldn't lie here and say we had a lot of interactions. We just talk 2-3 times, and primarily just out of my aggressiveness. But for me, I'll say that the essence of that, he was a dreamer and someone who would literally went from it. And from those, through the interactions of those who are much closer to him, I learned he was a guy who, once he thinks about something, there's no way that stops him.
Yeah.
Like he's someone, let's say I was being told the story of, what's the mall in Two Rivers Mall, how it came to be and how he built the whole team behind it. Like he had this idea, he was like, I'm going to do it. And the team, even some of the team who are there, maybe I may not mention names, like they were in better well-paying jobs, but they're like, I want you and you'll come work for me. And you'll not do anything to stop that to happen. And he goes for it. And I think that's one of the core things that probably I can say is a legacy that he left behind. And for me, I think just having that ear for someone who knows that nobody had done nothing and tells you that I have this, just kindly just read it and just leave me a forward. For me, I think it's this small thing that for me I can say through our interaction that can live on with me. Yeah.
The book starts from a very sad note, Ian.
Yeah.
And it starts with you, the introduction during the COVID, and you're in ICU. And to somebody who's not read that story, you speak about this old man who was on the bed across that eventually did not make it. And it's in that bed that this book and
Came to
your
be.
idea to write came because you asked yourself, what am I going to leave behind?
Yeah.
But there are people in this country to date, Ian, who don't believe that COVID existed.
Yeah. It's it's up to the me. I personally had it. And it was, I think I don't know when I was just having this conversation with someone. It was just when I remember, it was just a horrific thing. So I remember at that time when you had any kind of complications, go do the test, the scrub and all that stuff. And then I remember once you do the test, of course, they remain you with it. And then primarily in period of isolation until you get your results. I was called, hey, you're COVID positive. So it's like just remain in isolation and then observe. And then I started feeling some chest complications because at the time I was still staying alone.
Where were you at that point?
Where in terms of where I was staying at the point?
Yes.
No, I was actually...
Then who is around you?
No, I was staying alone. I was single, staying alone. I was living in Buruburu at the time. So I was just living alone. And then I remember that night, whatever, I started getting some complications. So during the morning, I called the insurance I was part of. I told them, hey, I need to be looked for a bed. I need to be observed. Because I didn't know. Because, it's a new disease and primarily acts on everybody differently. So luckily enough, I got a hospital bed. I think it was, which hospital was I in? The one in Parklands, not MP Shah.
Avenue?
Avenue, yes. It was Avenue. So they called on ambulance. That time they were dressing all white. And then luckily enough, it was during the day. There was not so many people around. So the ambulance came. Everything around me was, look at mefuniko, I don't know. It was all sanitized and all that stuff. So primarily, I was led onto the ambulance. It's like they were just directing me. No one else. I sat in the ambulance alone, up on Yuma, sirens and all that stuff. Got to hospital. It was like orchestrated. They open it. They're just leading you to the lift, go to the lifts, and then lift, and then go to the ICU and that stuff. And I was like surprised, like we were so many, we were like 20 of us. It's like an HDU ward, or I think HDU ward. And the thing about COVID has no cure. It's just about observation and just trying to give you, just to observe you for a period of time, give you some medication, some injections in here.
What's going through your mind inside that ambulance?
I don't know what will happen. At that point, I didn't know what will happen. I don't know if I'll make it alive. And I was like, how life can just swing like this. Because most of the time, guys who had COVID, you'll just walk into the hospital, next you're dead, and you'll be buried immediately. And unfortunately, during that period also, we lost people. But I'm like, it was like a point, my journey here is done. I don't know what will happen. And being in hospital, you can see, especially that story I shared of the old man who was amputated, I think he had other complications, also had COVID. I'm like, when I came in, I will see him walk around. The following morning, he was gone. So that same story, because in the same hospital, not far away, it could also happen to me. So it was a point of you coming to your essence of mortality. What exactly, you ask yourself, what am I here for? Have I really lived life to the fullest? Have I really given my best? So it's a point of just consciousness was in my mind, like, I don't know for how long I'm here, but I think the conviction that if I make it out of here, my life needs to count. So I need to literally, all that God has actually given me, I need to go all out and just do it. And that's where I was provoked, actually. Why not put the stories? Why not do some of the businesses I'm doing? Why not do this and this? I think I was provoked through that period.
When you came out of the hospital, I'm sure you writing this book, and this is just one of the moments you've shared, but how would you describe that season of illness, and then when you came out of the hospital, how did you get back into that ecosystem? Because they still fear, people still...
Yeah, people have that stigma. I remember even at the workplace everybody knew. I don't know why. When anything happens to you, everybody did not expect kila mtu anajua nasikia ulikuwa na covid hapo uga covid, and I'm like, my good, we have not even talked, we have not even seen each other because everything spread like wildfire. But at that point, just it humbles you. Like, no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Life can just change in a second. Life can just transition. So I think what changed in me is the essence of just defying fear, not living a fearful life. I think that's what happened to me, in the sense that I was more courageous to do what I want to do. Like, writing this book, I wrote it with anything I think about, I want to go for it. Any idea I have, I'll go for it. Because I started having this particular notion that I want to pursue a direction whereby I'm actually built for. So I always believe any idea, any kind of direction I want to go for, I'll actually go for it. Because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And
Yeah.
at the same time, that aspect of consciousness that I'm actually living this life to be of service to other people. And I think that's one of the core things I got to learn. I just want to be of service to as much to humanity as I can through the different gifts that God has given me. I think that's the consciousness I came to be. Because
Yeah.
when I die, I want it to be in the sense that I did everything I could possibly do. And that's one of the core things that I live through. Like every day I want to do something to take me forward. 3 things that out of that period that I actually live with is that every day I want to learn something new, because I always believe in what you know, you can actually, if you learn something new, it can become much better and give much more. I want to do something that keeps me closer to my gets me closer to my vision. So each and every day I'm only conscious the visions that I have and maybe God has given me. I want to do something every day about it, because I don't know at what point will I live to see it to fruition, or whatever point I live it is at significant level. And also at that point I always ask myself every day, what aspect of kindness have I done to humanity? Have I made someone laugh? Have I given back to the society? Have I helped somebody? So I think those are the 3 mantras that were shaped through that period. That every day I want to learn something new, because if I learn and become more, I'll do more. Every day have I done something towards my vision, because you realize we don't know when we are going to die. So, and the essence of our existence is to implement the vision and the purpose God has given us, and also just finally just to be good to somebody else. So I think those are the 3 things that actually stick to me out of that period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes when people think about business, people feel like they almost always look at business as business and humanity, kindness, and these other things. They exist in different spectrums. But now it's very interesting to hear that from you. But if I look at the book, Ian, you featured a lot of celebrities, man. Jua Kali, who is one of the artists and performing and recording artists. Eugene Bugwa. There is Haddad Tondo. There are a couple of people who have done amazing things. Sauti Sol, DJ Joe. Who would you say was the most impactful to you when you look at the stories and the experiences that you had when you're interacting with these guys?
I think because everybody features across different, different chapters.
Chapters, yes.
I think the chapter that literally stood out for me, and I just look back to it again, is the chapter around Through the Dirt. So this chapter features 2 stories, one of Haddad Tondo, who runs a business called Lock by Haddad, and Penitan Ntongondu, who runs Queen's Pizza. It's actually in Buru. I think they have the best pizzas, and they always push. I was there the other day just to eat her pizza. I think many of us, we always trying to look at it in terms of, like, life, you're not, like when you go through any path, or rather you pursue any journey, it's going to be smooth sailing. But the reality is that you're going to go through the dirt. By going through the dirt, I mean that you're going to face hurdles and you're going to face difficulties that's beyond our comprehension. Like, and I've never met anybody who's successful who doesn't have a scar. And the scar comes because you've gone through the dirt and having gone through a period of difficulties. And I think that's one of the core things, that sometimes you always look at the success, but you never see the journey that pushed someone towards becoming this successful. And how people who are successful have been able to wear their scars so well. So this chapter, I think it applies to all the entrepreneurs that I've actually featured, in terms of all of them have had a very difficult period that they never talk about. Maybe they never talk about it, but those close to them have experienced it and seen that. And it's just what's it called? I think one of the quotes is that none of us is exempted from life difficulties. All of us are going to face difficulties. And the challenge with that is that many of people who've at first experienced difficulties always get to give up on their dreams. Every story that I share, somebody has been through the dirt. Probably Jua Kali's story, starting out in a point whereby, none was going for you. You didn't have the resources. Like, you're living in, you're struggling at that particular point in time.
Yeah.
But you have to go through that season in order to become who you are, because the vision is much more bigger. Let's say Penina's story. Penina used to work at, I think it was Pizza Inn. And then one day during University of Nairobi Mandamano, all of a sudden, she was just attacked, literally lost a lens to her eye, had to lose her job, having to deal with eye surgery after eye surgery. But to have that aspect of going through this and have a dream of setting up a pizza place. Started off in Buru, built it. Now she has like 2 stores. Haddad Tondo used to live in Uganda. the difficulties of going through Ugandan as an orphan and just going through the difficulties, coming to Kenya, being pushed around, but just facing all those particular challenges to be able to build a brand. Like everybody has gone through the that in the sense that you have to experience difficulties. No one of us is exempted, whether you believe in God or not. I think just life naturally is inclined to pushing us towards the that. And the ability to go through the that is what defines you, because the that will also put scars in you. But there's no one that I know who's successful who doesn't have scars.
Yeah.
And I think that's what stood out to me, is that it is inevitable. Whatever that you're going to do, you're going to face difficulties. And the level of difficulties you don't know. You're going to lose a loved one. You're going to get into debt. You're going to be auctioned. Not because you want to, but life has been orchestrated in that particular way that you're going to face the difficulties. And in facing the difficulties, you become the best version of who you are. I think that's what really stood out for me.
But the guy sitting in front of me today is also an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
doing multiple things, a TV host, a business coach. What would you say has been the most challenging experience in your journey? What you would call your dat as
Yeah, I experienced one of it last year, whereby I was auctioned. I was living just a very it was such a lonely period and a very dark period, and I think it was my dad, and it was something that probably I've just maybe spoken about probably just once. I never I've not had the opportunity to speak out loudly because I try to live privately to some extent because my life is sort of like public and stuff. But I think it was at that a season whereby it was a season of darkness, whereby you're just in your dark space, not knowing what's going to happen next, but still at the same time holding on to the dream of what you have and going through that difficulty of making particular transitions and what's it called, having to experience the difficulties of everybody presuming your life is good, but your life is a wreck, but you still have to hold a smile and hold yourself together to see it through so that you can become who exactly God has made you to become. So it was that dark moment that I actually I went through for almost a year. But I'm just grateful for my family for having stood with me, because it's through that season you learn that it's only family that are your pillars. Everybody else who comes in and becomes family is just an additional value. But also got to understand that sometimes when you go through this season, it's not about others having been there for you. It's about also you having been there for yourself and won it gracefully. Because you realize in this life, all of us are facing different wars that you don't know about.
Yeah.
Everybody's in a battle. Maybe someone
battle.
is having a sick parent. Maybe someone is sick. Someone's going through it. All of us are in wars. And sometimes when you're going through that, you think and expect people to come through for you. Oh, you guys I'm going through a difficult part. You need to feel pity on me. You need to help me. No.
Yeah.
I think through that period, I won it confidently. But at the same time, you got to understand that your ability to fight your own wars, it's literally what defines you as a soldier.
That's true.
So every day, you're all in battles. You don't even know what's going to happen. You can just get a call right now that's going to change your life for the worse.
Yeah.
You can get a news that's going to change your world for the worse.
Yeah.
But it's your ability to literally live life as a soldier that's what defines you in going through this. And no one is exempted from this, regardless of where you are. And I'm just lucky enough, I have a lot of people around me who tell me through their dads that maybe they'll never share with people outside. But having been in that space whereby people have told me their story when I went through my season, I just went through as a soldier. And just grateful that I have such a loving family. I have a loving partner who literally walked with me through it. Yeah.
But Ian, a year is such a long period of time, especially if you have to live through it every single day. It can be very gruesome. But what kept you going? What are the things that pushed you forward that today you can look back and say to somebody who is out there who might be going through such a similar season, this is what kept me going?
Vision. Knowing what exactly it is that you're working for. I think once you have a vision, you understand that you can do anything because you know the bigger picture. Not everybody can see a bigger picture. And when you're going through that season, people are going to make recommendations to you. Hey, don't have a job. I'm fanya hivi na hivi. Everybody will make recommendations, but it's only you to just know what's the vision that I hold. And how can I hold myself together so that I can be able to be fit enough to be able to actualize this particular vision?
Yeah.
And I think it's very necessary for life to throw all these curveballs to you because it shows you that you're not an exemption unless you make yourself an exemption. Those who have gone through it successfully are the ones who actually make themselves an exemption.
Yeah.
And it's important because a lot of people give up. I know so many friends who give up on a lot.
Yeah.
Like life imekuchapa kidogo, you forget your dreams. You forget what exactly it is that you stood for. Because you look for a patch, but you not look for the whole cloth.
Yeah.
And many of us, when you go through those rough patches, you just want to put a patch. I did this, and then you want to forget about it. But you realize it's very necessary. Because having gone through that period, it informs you. It informs a lot of your decisions. It informs a lot of your values. It informs a lot of your outlook. Like, even, what's it called? When you see someone going through it, I'm like, I've been there. I know what exactly it is. I know how exactly it feels. When someone tells me that, Ian, I don't have even 50 shillings to buy credit, I understand. I don't have 50 shillings to buy lunch, I understand. Because as much as my life may look together, but I've been through to that particular point in time. Like, I don't know what I'm going to eat. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. I've been there.
Most of the time when people talk about such phases, a lot of times people refer to entrepreneurs, people in business. People forget a lot about people in employment who also go through similar phases. What would be your take to when you think about people who are in employment who also might be going through such a phase? Because the vision for the organization you're working for maybe is not yours. Or what would you say to them? What would you say to this person who is employed but might be going through that dirt as we've looked at?
Because first of all, how I look at it is that employment and entrepreneurship, they're all the same. The difference is just the different, outputs out of each. Because you're all in service. An employee is there to serve an employer and the vision. An entrepreneur is there to serve a customer and the vision that they hold. We are all in service. The difference is just in terms of scalability. The difference is in terms of the potential of each. And all of us have their pros and cons. So for an employee, primarily you're employed and going through a difficult period. One thing you need to always ask yourself, and for me, that's one thing that I always advocate for everybody to always ask themselves, why am I doing this? Why? If your why is much bigger, you'll be able to see your dart through it. Primarily, yes, you're employed, you don't like the job, but primarily this job is helping me sustain myself and maybe sustain my family. That's the bigger why. So that's why you have to see this through that. But at the same time, to anybody, whether, especially if you're employed, always try to hold a vision that's also individual to you. Because always remember, an employee, you're just a number. You're just a number at any particular point. When the company has any turmoil, you'll just be a number, unless you're a shareholder. But one thing I always say is that never forget yourself, and never give yourself so much to employer that you forget yourself. Because at the end of it, it's about you. As in, this company at one point will be too old enough to be kicked out. This company will go through seasons, they need to restructure, you'll be kicked out. But what about you? So always say, yes, you can be employed. Maybe you may not want to do business, which is fine because it's a personal decision. Not everybody can do businesses. Because if you're all doing businesses, who will be your customers?
Yeah.
But one thing I always say, if you have a gift, exploit. If you want to, try to understand investment as much as possible. Don't just buy into narratives. I think when I was in employment, there was this narrative, nunua shamba. But I'm like, just try to understand investment. How can you build your particular investment life? Right? Try to understand how money works and be able to use what you have. Try to understand what gift do I have? What do I need to build on it? Always have, I'm sure all of us have a deposit of a dream of what we want. Try to pursue that as much as possible. Because I think the moment you forget yourself, you always feel sold out when anything happens that you're thrown out. You'll see, your company is due and buy, but I'm like, you forgot about yourself. If you literally remembered yourself in your journey, even as you're serving an employer, you'll always be at comfort. At least najua, during my period in employment, nilitry biashara maybe ikiwork, nikafanya investment ikawork, nikajua hivi, nikameki network, nikafanya hivi na kitu. In case anything happened, I was able to be somebody through that particular process. And I think that's one of the core things that people need to, as in never forget about yourself.
Yeah.
And always have your why much bigger. Why am I doing this? Am I just working to feed myself and my family alone? Or am I also working to also feed myself through this particular process? And I think that's one of the core things. Say just never forget yourself. Never forget yourself. Because if you forget yourself, the company will eventually forget you because you're just a number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I transition to your second book, Food for Thought. Tell us about this one.
So Food for Thought has been, it's something that I started working on when I didn't know what exactly it is I was working on. It was a behavior, like for the last decade, I've always been noting down my thoughts and reflection and the philosophies I read upon. So Food for Thought, primarily, it is a book that's actually shaped on in three ways. So there are quotes and reflections around different aspects of life. there are, there are philosophies that I share around it, and also I talk about seasons. So everything has been phrased around quotes and reflections, and also there are philosophies. I express these particular philosophies that I believe in, that I've actually lived through, and primarily it's a book whereby you can reflect regardless of whatever point in life you are in. If you're in business, I share some thoughts around it. I share thoughts around productivity, time, general thoughts around life. I share the different seasons of life, the different reflections, because one thing I realized about myself is that I've been very conscious through life. And through these particular aspects of being conscious through it, I shape thoughts and quotes that primarily can provoke anybody to read through it. So that's primarily what the book is about. Just to feed your thoughts. Because primarily your thoughts influence your actions, and your actions influence, thoughts influence your decisions influence your actions, and your actions determine the output of your life. And this particular book primarily just walks you through it.
Yeah. But they say don't judge a book by its cover, but it's very beautiful.
Yeah, it's dope. I love dope things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love dope things. So I create dope things.
And your covers are particularly very interesting.
I take time.
But for this one, tell us about the ideas behind the cover. What's going on?
So thoughts are like flowers. I think I also just share it here. So the flower depicts thoughts, which bloom when nurtured. The butterfly defines freedom represented by thoughts after being confined and refined in their cocoon. So you find that how a butterfly comes to be, it was in a cocoon. So it's just literally your thought. But over the period, when you see the transition of a butterfly, it eventually gets to fly, which is your freedom, which primarily what the butterfly represents. And the flowers, thoughts are like flowers. They can only bloom if you nurture them. So that's what primarily influenced this particular artwork. Yeah, so that's primarily what exactly. So your thoughts are just like flowers. They bloom if you nurture it. Your thoughts be able to become like butterflies if you just let them have the whole freedom and going through this particular period. So that was the thoughts around it. And I just wanted something to play around it.
Yeah.
Initially, when I'd given the idea out to the designer, initially I was not in love with it.
Yeah.
But I shared it to a lot of people. Everybody loved it. I was like, okay, sawa, acha iende. Because I thought it made me, I don't know, anyway, acha nisiseme.
Sema tu.
But let me just leave it to that. I may say I'm against the LGBTQ, but I was just like, oh, whatever. I had some things about it, but eventually everybody thought it's cool.
Yeah.
I thought initially when I saw the flowers and everything, but anyway, I made meaning out of it.
Yeah.
Because I thought it made me look girly, but I was like, okay, so I made peace with it and I made meaning out of it.
Yeah.
Even the one for flowers and butterflies, I had to make meaning of it.
I hear you're thinking, though I didn't, on the first instance, I didn't look at it from that perspective, but I think I liked the color.
Yes, it's dope.
And it looks like there's so much going on in
yes.
that now.
And I made meaning of it.
Yeah, it's thought provoking. But what is that one outstanding thing in this food for thought that you whoever is listening or viewing us today should be a take home from this book? So
the book has so many quotes, and it's very difficult because I think it has over 400 quotes, and they're all just sort of I've walked through
your
it.
quotes or quotes?
Yeah, just my quotes.
Okay.
I have on my phone I have over 1,000 quotes. So it's just trying to put them all together and share why. Because all these quotes primarily I read somewhere or I thought about something. I was in a particular season, I read them. But I think what stood out for me, or rather what stands out in this book, are some of the philosophies I share, because these particular philosophies literally are inherent in life. Say one of the philosophies I talk about is always be in motion.
Yeah.
And I always tend to look at life in the sense that regardless of whatever it is life is about motion. You exist because of motion. We are here and you're having this conversation because your heart is beating, your blood is flowing, your mind has the pulses and all that stuff. So based on that particular thing in terms of how God created us, is that in the sense that we are ever in motion. Once your heart stops pumping, you're dead. And that's one of the philosophies I share about in this particular book, is that always be in motion in whatever instance of life you are in. Like in any particular pursuit, what exactly are you doing every day to get there? Because no one who's at the top just got there. Let me use, because we were talking about politics earlier on, our president right now, Ruto, he has been in politics since he was 24. Right now he's in his 50s. He has ever been in motion for him to actually acquire the presidency. Any person who's the CEO has ever been in motion for that particular thing to happen. So for you to actualize anything and to make meaning out of your life is always have that element of always being in motion. Because motion primarily what life was built for, and primarily it's important for us to always embrace it so that you can actually make something out of our life. So that's one of the philosophies that stands out for me. And secondly, just weirdly, it follows this particular philosophy follows it's always be still. So they're all contradictory but are very important for you to understand. In life, you always have to be in motion, but also have instances to be still. Because instances of being still primarily are instances that provoke to make sense out of your motion. I have an interest in dairy. One of the concepts around dairy is a concept called aging. In the instance, let's say for yogurt or ice cream, aging primarily just leaving the ingredients to be still for hours. And you realize there's a difference in terms of the output. The dairy product has gone through aging that's being still. It's much tastier, it's much better as compared to one that was actually just produced and giving out to the market. So still, it's being still primarily, it's opportune moments that you as an individual can be able now to be still. Because in moments of still, primarily, the universe, even God communicates to you. Being still are moments whereby you get your inspiration. Because sometimes, yes, it's nice to always be in motion because being in motion enables you to actualize it. But instances of still gives you ideas, gives you an opportune moment to actually provoke and even to think through things. I'm in the world of innovation. My previous role was head of innovation at Standard. And I realized one of the best ways for you to get ideas is to be far away from everything and just to be still.
Yeah.
And just let your mind to wander and your mind to be intertwined, letting your spirit to just be still. A lot of magic happens. People forget about this. Always try to have moments by yourself, because moments of yourselves are never really just go wasted, because these moments build ideas, build thoughts, provoke you to actually build you for your motion. So that's one of the things I share through it.
Yeah. And if at all you're meeting Ian today, catch him on KTN Home every Thursday at night.
Yes.
He has a show called Late Night Business. One is one of the shows I catch every Thursday.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I'm also looking forward to this one that is coming this week about that lady who was flying. Yeah. But now when you look at these two books and you go through, you think about the process of writing them. How has these processes changed your approach to your businesses or even the teaching, because you're also a teacher and a coach? How would you say the process of writing and communicating these thoughts have also shaped how you approach your entrepreneurship journey and also your teaching or coaching journey?
So one of the cool things is that I always want to share things that I do. And I want to share things that I believe in and actually practice it. Because I never been one to advocate for something that I don't believe in or don't trust. So I think from the first book, primarily, I'd shared journeys and I actually just shared my thoughts about things I believe in and things I actually do in the world of business. And the second book, it's primarily an intertwine between life and businesses. So within it, I want to always provoke the audience to be better. For me, I always want it that once you touch my book, you can actually walk away with something. Because the essence of reading or the essence of acquiring information, I never believe just for the sake of it, but for it to impact you into action. So for me, I always want to, my approach is that how can I provoke you into action? Because there are so many books I have so many books in my library, especially my online library. But the essence of me touching any book is for me to be a better human being and for it to provoke my thought, my decisions, and my actions. So for me, in the books that I do and any action or any kind of idea I want to put it together, I want it to provoke you into action. Because I always believe that I'm just a funnel. All these thoughts are just not for me, and all these thoughts are just not for me to confine to myself and use it for myself. I always want in the point that in my existence, even after my existence, anybody who touches any of the book that I do can be provoked to become a better human being, because that's what I stand for. I stand for growth. I so much believe in growth. I never want to see people in the same place, I never want to see you just doing the same thing and not becoming better. I so much believe in growth in whatever thing, in your life, in your business, in your growth, because you're all built for growth naturally. So for me, all my books, I want you to impart you to growth, because that's what I believe in. That's what I stand for. That's one of the philosophies also, I talk about in the book, one of the philosophies is about you are built to create. We're just not built to become consumers. So the essence of you consuming anything above everything is for you to create. So whenever you touch any of my books or whenever you read any of my thoughts, it's for you now to go out and create, because that's what you're built for.
Yeah.
You ask yourself, why do you exist? We all exist to create something.
Yeah.
For some, maybe it's to create children, which I believe is so basic, because any person can do it. But what's the deposit that you left behind? What were you able to create? It may not be a business, but it can be, even if it's a human being that you created. Can you create the most wonderful, morally upright human being? That's what have you created? It can be, what's it called? Is it the gift that you've done? Maybe you've coached somebody. So always ask yourself, what exactly have you created in whatever capacity that you hold? So I believe in creation.
Yeah. And it's a question for you too. What have you created? Remember, this What's on Your Shelf podcast comes to you courtesy of Nuria Bookstore, in partnership with Nuria Bookstore, who are the leading online bookstore for the last 4 years in a row. Nuria have their online market space, one of the best books marketplace you'll find. And today they have audiobooks on that platform. Check out nuria.com, but also visit the physical shop. They have the bookstore at the first floor of the Bazaar Plaza. Go there and see more than 1,200 Kenyan books, including Ian Denis's titles, are available at Nuria Bookstore. But Ian, you've talked to a lot of people on business. You've interviewed a lot of people. You've read a lot of books. You've been teaching. What is the biggest challenge facing entrepreneurs in Kenya today?
The notion that everything will just come, or rather everything will be put into place, or everybody owes you something. Someone owes you capital. Someone owes you an opportunity. I think we live in an entitled world, in the sense that you expect everything will be given unto you. But one thing I've learned, and it's a challenge, because entrepreneurship is just about a mindset. What kind of mindset do you hold? And are you able now to literally push yourself to get yourself to the vision that you hold? So you have this idea, we always feel that someone needs to fund this idea. So we'll complain about capital. But there's a concept I speak about, I think, in it's called bootstrapping, and they share stories of how big companies such as Bonfire, because also they're part of Sarah and Simon Cabo, also part of the story, is that how able to bootstrap themselves into building a $1 billion shilling business.
Yeah.
Because they're able to, and they started just with a laptop and just started out building they just bringing friends together. So we build ourselves notions that literally impediments to what exactly that you want.
And that exactly what my next question was going to be, like, looking at that as a challenge. How has your books addressed that challenge, and how can an entrepreneur reading your books find pace navigating through that challenge?
So for me, first of all, I can't say that my book gives you all the solutions, because there are so many people who share so much information. My books primarily will provoke you out of the different stories and show you the different possibilities. So through my book, I show you the possibility that people who are just as normal as you, breathe the same air, have the same oxygen, in the same kind of confinement, I've actually done it. So why not you? That's the whole provocation behind it. So what I share through the books is just the possibilities and reflections through the thoughts, or maybe through the ideas, or through the stories that I share, just to provoke you that normal people, as you have been able to do it, because I've been able to literally circumnavigate a particular mindset. That yes, this is the vision that I hold, these are the challenges that I hold, but I've been able to find ways to literally get to my vision, regardless of the limitations that I hold. And that's primarily what everybody needs to look at. You need to have a conviction of the vision that you hold. And once you have that particular conviction, start creating ways and trying to bootstrap your way towards enabling you get to this particular vision. Because no one will ever give you everything. Even as you say, oh, capital is an issue, I need to raise capital. But you realize you never raise capital if you don't have a concept that's working. You never raise capital if you've not put out your own. So you need to have a conviction of yourself. And I think sometimes we always look at it in terms of challenges as just challenges, but always look at it challenges are opportunities for you to find your best expression and to have the best ideas to build what exactly it is that you're built for, or rather what you're made for.
So there are a lot of also technological advancement. If you're looking at AI, the rise of AI, you're looking at the improved digital landscape. How do you think this is shaping up when you're looking at the two spectrums you are in, the media and also the entrepreneurship space? How would you say those advancements have shaped those two spectrums?
AI, it's changing everything, even how you do things. My second book, I didn't need to have an editor. I used the AI to edit for me. So that's how it's changing things. So it's changing how we do our processes. It's changing how, even our creative process. So right now we don't have an excuse, because anything we can build. We can actually build anything. The whole thing as a human being, and I find this where AI is taking place, like AI is making systems and processes much easier. So it's leaving our work as creatives or entrepreneurs to become just to build our thoughts and using AI to enable our thoughts to churn out much faster and much easier. So for me, that's how I look at it. It's like it's becoming that enabler that we'll need.
There's a lot of victimization on the people using AI and things like that. What's your take?
Sometimes change is inevitable in everything. And primarily, we can't, especially in the world of technology, we can't have a status quo. We can't say, oh, I used to use a typewriter. I was a typewriterist. Right now, I expect everybody to become a typewriter. People are using computers right now. What's it called? You can provoke the chat GPTs and everything to literally provoke, to put out and churn out your thoughts. You can't say I'm a typist anymore. So the whole thing, I always look at it is in terms of whatever industry you're in, how can you shape yourself to this particular new positioning that's actually happening? So for me personally, I'm involved in the innovation space. Even next week, I'm actually doing some Google courses around AI. I want to understand this space even much more. And once you have, and in every technology, and this is an encouragement to just try to understand it, because AI is just one of them. There's a book I'm reading. It's called Innovation Ultimatum, and they speak about, is it 10? Almost, I think 10 new technologies are going to shape between 2020 and 2030. AI is just one of it. And you realize sometimes you talk about AI as if imekuja tu jana, but AI started out in the 50s. And then, what's it called? It was a thought in the 50s, and then tried out kidogo in the 80s, didn't work. In the 2000s, didn't work. And then it just picked up speed from 2012 because technologies and computers are much faster. 2019, everything just came out. It's been in the works for the last 70 years. But one of the things, it's not something that just came into place. It's because technology grew to a point whereby it can accommodate this innovation. And those who are able to circumnavigate this period are the ones who are able to have understanding of these particular tools through AI and use them to enable their life much easier. Because the essence of technology is to make our life easier and actually to enable us to do much more and to concentrate more on our essence. And the essence of us as human beings, there's no animal or no computer that can replace our creativity. So it's us to now provoke these thoughts and use these particular tools to become better.
Yeah. But now, Ian, as you look back and your learnings, your experiences, are there certain qualities that you can say are key for an entrepreneur to possess to succeed in this current business landscape?
I think it's your ability to change and your ability to learn. One of the core things is that never remain in your status quo, especially in the entrepreneurship landscape, because things keep on changing. And if you're able to learn and if you're able to embrace change, you're able now to be, I think, or let me just put it this way, just learn to become fluid. Whatever particular circumstance or the business goes into place, can you become fluid and fit into it?
Yeah.
Never remain in your status quo, because I think in the world of entrepreneurship, the status quo doesn't really help.
Yeah.
It's just about your ability to become fluid. And to become fluid, you have to learn how to change. Because things keep on changing every time. Concepts keep on coming every time. Also, another thing is that never take anything to heart. I've learned that thing. And sometimes I may look foolish. I never hold anything. Because today you have, tomorrow you may not. Today you can be, tomorrow you may not be. But in this particular dynamics is that never forget yourself in that particular path because you're not your business.
Yeah.
Many of us tend to define yourself with your business by what you do. But what if you lose it? COVID happened, so you had built maybe an event business and it just crumbles. Will you also just crumble down? So I think that's one of the big questions. Never nearly hold a huge attachment. Be part of the journey, be present, but never hold so much attachment to it. Always try to also be yourself and just get to live life because your value is not in your business. If you die today, your business will either continue, depends on the system that you put, or it'll just be brought down. But are you able to say that you lived in conviction of what exactly it is that was your purpose in your existence? For me, that's how I look into it.
But now looking at the current innovations and looking at the technological advancement, looking at the current business landscape in Kenya, what would you say or how do you foresee the future of business?
Dynamics will always remain. So let's say right now, if you're not on TikTok, primarily what's it called, getting your business noticed. If you don't know how to do the social media ads, it may be difficult to get noticed because sometimes you realize that the cost of entry for most of the businesses is becoming very, very easy. You realize back in the day, primarily to just a reserve of people maybe in the manufacturing, you must have huge capital. Right now, I can get a supply in China. I can get things cheaply. I can ship it out. I can do, I can use technology to literally enable me And the cost of doing business has literally come down, literally, when you look at it as compared to what exactly it was in the day. So for me, how I look at it in terms of business, that in every sector, just as when you understand how the Kenyan dynamic is, anybody who does a business becomes successful, everybody gets to copy into it. It's just your ability to build a brand and your ability to literally become fluid to what exactly your customer demands, enable for you to build a big business.
Yeah.
And most people, we always want to build businesses, but we forget our business is actually tied to the brand that you're able to build. So I think the future, and it's not even the future, what exactly businesses are the brands you're able to build and the promise you're able to build. So in terms of you building your business, due to the different dynamics that businesses are actually facing, never forget to build your brand, because a brand is primarily what sustains the business.
Yeah.
Whatever business that you're in, you did not build a brand, anybody can easily come to that business and easily replace you because they've built a brand. People remember brands. People will always get into any kind of businesses, but the businesses that are able to see out time are the businesses that are built brands.
Yeah.
Because people actually trust more brands. So endeavor, you're getting into an entrepreneurship endeavor, just have it at the top of your mind. I'm building a brand, and this brand is what is going to sustain this business. Many of us want to build a business, not to build a brand. And any business is going to face different dynamics. And the businesses that are able to see through these dynamics are businesses with brands. Because you realize, let me just an example. You had Nokia's back in the day. I think, which other flip phones you had? Ericsson and all that stuff.
Motorola.
But you find that the likes of Samsung came to be, Apple came to be, because they not only built good businesses, but able to build brands. And the interesting thing about even Samsung, the phones just came about it recently. Initially, they used to do other businesses before. But because they've built a big brand, they're able to get into any market and build anything. So for me, I always look at it, build brands, and then these brands will enable you sustain and build businesses, not the other way around.
Wow. Ian, if you were to recommend a book today to somebody watching us today, what book would it be and why?
Oh, there are quite a number of books. Let me try to go through my library. Which one? But besides the ones I've spoken about, let me go through my list of something that I'll recommend. Oh, one is a book by Austin Kleon. It's called Show Your Work. It's such an interesting book, especially for the creatives. I'll say grab this particular book, Show Your Work, because it's an interesting book that provokes you as a creatives and primarily just enables you to understand the bigger picture. Because at the end of it, like one of the core things I remember from this book is that always churn out content, or rather churn out your work, because those who actually are meant for your work will eventually find it. It's never the other way around. So sometimes you always want to do things so that you get immediately noticed. Even you through this particular path. It's a long path, especially the content path. But eventually those who need you, or those who actually you're meant for, will eventually find you. Yeah. So Show Your Work. It's such a nice book. Another book that literally changed me also, it's called Kingdom Principles by Miles Monroe. It's a book around, because I practice the Christian faith. Yeah. Because I've studied it and I had so many provoking questions, and primarily was it not this book, I would have left the Christian faith because it would not have made sense to me. It's a book that speaks about understanding God's kingdom and why exactly God's kingdom works, why exactly it is. Because when you read the New Testament, you'll see so many parts in the kingdom of God, and I think that's one of the utterances that Jesus made when he came into place. Many of us don't understand it. What does God mean by the kingdom of God? How does the kingdom of God works? And Miles, I think, is the only person in this world who's just broken it down so well. So if you're doubting anything, or you want to know about the Christian faith much more, for you to have a conviction about it, because I always believe you don't practice a faith unless you give power to the faith. I say I believe in Jesus, so I'm giving power to Jesus. Any person you believe in, you're giving power to. But before you give yourself to you give yourself to any faith, try to understand the deep essence of it. And for me, I think, was it not for this book, I would have just even left the religion or the belief by itself, because it gave me a big understanding and broke down what the kingdom of God is. Yeah. What does it mean in the Bible? Why exactly things are as it is? And I think for me, this book really changed my life, because at that time I was questioning a lot.
How do you bring those two worlds together? Because many a times people tend to dissociate business and making money with religion and faith conversations. Oh. And a lot of times people always almost expect you as a faith person or as a believer to not be very commercially thinking.
It's a personal choice. For me, I'll say what you believe, because sometimes you're an accident of where you're born. I was having this conversation. I believe in Christianity because I was born into it and I went through it. If I was born in India, I would have been an Hindu. If I was born in Thailand, I would have been a Buddhist. So for me, the aspect of religion is about you now seeking to understand why exactly it is and questioning it, and also making a conscious choice. Don't practice something that you don't believe in, and don't practice something because you're told to believe in. Me personally, I question. Initially, I was Catholic, became a Protestant and whatever, because I always question a lot of these things. So for me, I always find there's a because religious principles are literally life principles. They all intersect. Every religion that you look into, there are practices within that particular religion, regardless of whatever religion, they share quite a lot. All religions, Muslim, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, there's so many things that they share together. So, and we can't say that how the religions came to be, we can't say they were fools. And we can't say that because you believe in this religion, you're a fool. There's a reason why. So I found there's an intersect between religion, though I tend to believe more in spirituality because it's more of a personalized relationship based on how exactly you believe. There's such an intersect because the principles within the spiritual realms and the physical realms they're intertwined. In my first book, I think one of the things I shared as my takeaways, and I think it was my last takeaway as my final business nuggets. I not only shared, one of my theories, but I shared a lesson on giving. It was my takeaway. Yeah, give. It was one of the principles I share for you to be successful in business, and I learned it. And this one I learned from the Muslim faith, because some of the entrepreneurs I know are actually Muslims. There's one called Moha. He runs Lamu Dishes or Mangrove restaurants. They're in Karen, Nairobi West, Rongai, one of the good foods. I remember the first time I went to meet up with him, very few times, like an interviewer asked me, Ian, I'd like to meet up with you. We just catch up maybe before the interview. I usually avoid it, but he was like, I don't know, I had a good feeling about it. He took me to his restaurant, has lovely food. Check out Mangrove restaurant. And then one of the cool things I learned was that he told me something, because I was seated almost outside, and then I used to see street children come. He comes, and then they're told to go to the back, and then they go. So I was like wondering what's going on. I was like, what goes on? He told me, like, Ian, every person who comes to ask for food, I give them food. And I don't give them leftover food. I give them food. Like, the things I ordered, nimtotapewa children. Any food inabaki nyuma, children wanapewa. Like, they eat like everybody else. Kani kuku ni kuku. And also, this particular principle also learned it from the founder of Mama Nilishe. She runs Mama Nilishe restaurant. She also tells me that at the end of the day, she tells me that she cooks, every morning she cooks food, not knowing who's going to come. Meitabaki, the employees go with it, or atapeana. And I learned it most, because you see, all of them are Muslims. And interesting enough, all their businesses are prospering because based on this particular religious belief of giving, the importance of giving. Also from DJ Jomfalme, I know primarily, maybe when he watches his Peter Shanga, he told me in confidence, I asked him, how come you're a DJ who's ever booked and has been in this game for over almost 15 years? He tells me it's the aspect of giving. He has a charity that he gives to. He has a charity home that he takes care of, and a lot of people that he gives to consistently without even taking pictures and cameras. So giving is one of the it's a spiritual aspect. In the Christianity, it has been, to some extent, it has been commercialized. But the aspect of giving, it's a religious belief, a spiritual belief. But when you practice this by yourself in your business, you'll actually see the results. And for me, I just believe in that. There's such an intertwine between the religious or spiritual principles and success in business. Anybody who exercises some of these particular principles, when you actualize it in your business, you'll see the results. It never makes sense. Why would I want to create a business where I'm giving everything? But you realize those who do see the results. Because you understand, you don't do a business for yourself. You do a business to serve. And that's what I was talking about earlier, the concept of not hold your business to heart. In the sense that if this business fails, whatever, this is what exactly I built my ego upon. I think you're building a business to be of service. And this particular service, it is to humanity and to everybody around it. So if you hold this particular principle and you apply it, you'll see the result. Because those who give, it never makes sense, but the world, and people say the world, but God always finds a way to replenish you. Because the hand that's always open is the hand you'll always receive. Yeah. And that's the whole thing. There's such an intertwine between the both.
So profound. Ladies and gentlemen, Ian Denis today on What's on Your Shelf. Ian, what's next? What are you currently working on? What's coming up?
maybe this is the right point. So I'm building a dairy company. It's called Mojo. So soon it will be, people can be able to buy dairy products from me. So it's been an idea that I've worked on for the last couple of times. So I'm looking forward to it. There are 3 books that I'm working on. So I think that one is dope. So one is it's a biography around someone who's in the Secret Service. We just signed the contract this week. So because I set up a publishing house, so I'm very excited about it. It's a book, hopefully to come out this year. Shares a story about an individual in the Secret Service, some of the secrets during Moi's time and all that stuff. It's a dope book. There's another book I'm working on. It's called How to Create and Sell Narratives. It's an idea that I'm in the process of pouring it out, because the world is built on narratives. Anything you believe in, anything you purchase, anything you subscribe to is because someone has been able to sell narratives to you. So I'm in the process of now deciphering how can you create and sell narratives, because politics is a narrative, religion is a narrative, school is a narrative, your thoughts, everything's around, it's a narrative. So I'm working on that. And then also another book that I'm working on is Deadbeat Leadership. I'm very passionate about leadership because everything stands and falls on leadership. So I'm exploring some of the 6 V's around leadership. What's it called? How do you able to build a vision? How do you create values, your people values, and all that stuff. So yeah, so authorship is something I'm pursuing. Creating some of the new businesses I'm actually working on, because I personally like to create. So those are some of the things that are coming out. So probably the next time we have a conversation, we'll have like 2 or 3 books to discuss, because I think I've put it in myself. At least every year I do 3 or 4 books, because I think God has given me so much information.
Yeah.
I just want to let it out, and I hope I can just let it out as much as possible.
We'll be happy to come back
Karibu
when the
sana.
3 books are ready.
This is Aqua.
Yeah.
Hata maybe before this year. Majaliwa.
Yeah. So how can somebody find you? Where can somebody find you in your works?
Social media, Ian Denis Network. You can find me. I always respond to my DMs as much as I can. Some of my books, Nuria Store, you can actually get them. The 2 books are there. Textbook centers all across the country, they're there. Yeah, so that's how people can get me. And then watch my show, Late Night Business, every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Always on TV. Oh yeah, I'm also building a media network. So I also want to transition fully into the digital. So I'm setting up, it's called the End Network. So it's going to be dope. So much content you're working on. One of the content I can talk about, probably it's coming out soon. It's called The Business Graveyard, how some of these particular brands came to be. So one of the first features that maybe will be coming out in a week or 2, it's how Switch TV was switched off. So I did a narrative as to how some business brands were built, how they end up, how they were built, became big, and then they fell off. So what are some of the lessons around it? Because one of the core things I like teaching people around it. So it will be a series on YouTube, Riley. By the point you're watching this, maybe in 2 weeks' time, you can search for it, you'll find it. Yeah, so that's what I'm working on. I try to do many things at the same time because I like finding expressions in so many different things. And I always want to see them all to fruition. Yeah, so that's primarily what exactly we're working on.
Thank you so much, Ian, for allowing us to sit with you today on What's
Anytime.
Yeah.
Primarily next time I'll invite you to the Mojo Milk Bar. Primarily it will be up by August, so mtakuja.
Yeah.
We have ice cream there. We have.
We've always been told that if the longer the wine stays, the better it becomes. So milk is also.
Yeah. No, not milk per se, but what's it called? Let's say dairy products. Let's say for
ice cream,
for yogurt.
What's
it called? It goes for incubation for between 6 to 8 hours. For ice cream, once you've already built your recipe, primarily the same, almost even 8 to 10 hours. For maziwa mala, some even up to 12 hours. So process of aging. So I learned dairy. It's one of the things that I'm passionate about.
My grandma put that thing in that.
Good. Yeah, so the longer it stays.
Days.
Yes, the longer it stays, it becomes better. Yeah, so that's the thing I was thinking about, being still and aging. Yeah, so the next time we're going to do this conversation, it won't be in my house. It will be now at the Mojo restaurant.
And gloves and
no, it'll be on a good setting. It's like a milk bar. It will be good. You'll have a serving, because at least everything will be good. Next time we'll do it there.
I look forward to that one.
It'll be dope.
Can we do it next week?
Summer 2 time. I'll create time.
Yes. And thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that is where this curtain comes to a close. But we can't end it without giving today's book. Last week, in our last episode, the guy who won the book, Visual NBA, was a guy from Nakuru. He's called at Osuri on Twitter. And thank you so much for watching the show. And today, we'll be giving another book, courtesy of Nuria Bookstore. And the question I want to ask you is, what was the first book we talked about today? What was the first book we talked about today? The first person on the comment section giving us the correct answer wins the book for this week. Thank you so much for joining with us throughout this episode. It's been amazing talking to this gentleman, a coach, a teacher, a TV host. Catch his show every Tuesday on KTN Home, Late Night Business. You will enjoy the conversations. But above everything else, catch his 2 books, The Business Conquest and Food for Thought, which are both available at the Nuria bookstore. Nuria, remember, are partners with us in this podcast. They are online on nuria.com, but also find them on the physical bookstore on the first floor of the Baza Plaza. It's been amazing having this conversation. And thank you so much for journeying with us to the end. We look forward to the next one. And until that one, have a good one.